I do not know why a simple man like me, who does not want or need any trouble, should be asked to speak on a subject which can be both emotive and divisive, and to do so in the company of distinguished Ghanaians and Accras of high public standing. Considering the quality and experience of the discussants on this panel, I approach the subject matter of this evening's conversation in this jubilee year of our country with some trepidation. Mr. Chairman, this year being our school's 90th anniversary, I am reminded that Achimota did not train us to tremble in the face of difficulties, but the school prepared us to think sometimes outside the box, to excite our mental faculties, to address issues by finding solutions to problems, and generally to go out into every part of our country as living waters to a thirsty land. Mr. Chairman, I have seen many definitions of ethnicity, but the one which, in my view, best describes the word is that which sees ethnicity as the fact of belonging to a social group whose members have a common or similar history, culture, language, social norms, and mores. But, Mr. Chairman, there is another word, which probably, because of its pejorative connotation, is not fashionable to use these days, and that word is tribe. Ladies and gentlemen, the word ethnicity compared to the word tribe, which is more primordial, is a rather genteel word. In our context, no one should have any doubt what tribe or tribal means. I'll be using these words interchangeably. Ethnicity in our political development, learnings in a 60-year journey. That is the title of our discourse today. It is useful to start by examining what some others have said or written on this or similar topics. In the Brink of Disaster, a collection of lectures and writings of Ken Saro-Wiwa, he postulates that the lack of competent personnel, the canalization of all energies into the struggle for power, debilitating corruption, and other social evils have arisen because we have ignored the ethnic nature of our society. Ken Saro-Wiwa draws the distinction between ethnicity and ethnocentrism, suggesting that while ethnicity is permanent, its misuse against other groups is what must be fought. In an article on ethnicity and politics in Ghana, Naomi Chazan argues that despite the differences in regime types and ideological positions, ethnicity has come to play an increasing role in the politics of Ghana. At a wedding of his son, to whom I was the best man in 1980, Mr. W.A. Wiafe, later Nana Wiafe Kwajane, a noted Ghanaian businessman, politician, and chief of Kwawu extraction, said, "When I was growing up, you were expected to marry from your town or village, or at least from your own tribe. But today, my son is marrying a lady whose parents are Fanti. The world," he said, "is becoming smaller." Mr. Chairman, Ken Saro-Wiwa's point, even though he was speaking about Nigeria, is that our societies are basically ethnic in nature, and all the various ethnic groups are struggling to get a piece of the national cake. To get a piece, one has to control national resources, and this can be done through attaining political power. Hence, ethnic groups have tended to line up behind political parties or leaders who, in their view, are likely to get them their share. The lack of competent people and self-aggrandizement of officials and leaders further draw back the development of our countries. I share Saro-Wiwa's view that ethnocentrism should be fought, since there's no real basis to discriminate against others because they happen to be born into another tribe. I will be discussing with you the perceptions of the Ghanaian people about the various Ghanaian governments 60 years on, and how ethnicity has played a role in our political development. I agree with Naomi Chazan that ethnicity continues to play an important role in the politics of Ghana. Let me come to the point made by Mr. Wiafe. He is showing us that in the past, our horizons were limited to where we came from, to our immediate environs. Today, the limited frontiers of tribe have, through intermarriages, been breached and may yet provide us with one way to the future which we seek. Mr. Chairman, permit me to discuss some political developments in our country, Ghana, over the last 60 years, and see how ethnicity may have influenced various governments. The euphoria of independence from the British Crown in March 1957, under the leadership of Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and Nzima from the western region of Ghana, promised much for Ghana. Dr. Nkrumah was a democratically elected leader who later became the undisputed dictator of the Ghanaian state. During his tenure, however, ethnicity did not come up as an issue, even though initially Ashanti, parts of the north, and pockets of Accra and the Volta region were implacably opposed to his CPP government. Nkrumah, however, did have a small group of Nzima friends, who, though powerful, remained in the background for a long time. Men like Ayekumi, W.M. Uhal, and William Bedwansa. The trusted Ambrose Yankee, also an Nzima, was constantly by his side. Mr. Chairman, in February 1966, history tells us that Nkrumah was overthrown in a coup d'etat led by Colonel E.K. Kotoka and Eve. The National Liberation Council, which was set up by the military police leaders of the coup, was chaired by General J.A. Ankra, a Gan. But the real powers behind the NLC were Colonel E.K. Kotoka, Major A.A. Afrifa, and Asante, and Mr. J.W.K. Harley, and Eve. On April 17, 1967, Kotoka, then a lieutenant general, was killed by Lieutenant Moses Yabua, a Bono, in an attempted coup. In 1969, General Ankra was forced to resign his position as a result of improper dealings with a Nigerian businessman, Francis Nzerebe. Afrifa, now a lieutenant general, took over as chairman of the NLC. The question of ethnicity reared its head, as it was perceived by some people that the FIFA may have had a hand in the killing of Kotoka. No evidence has ever been made available to support this perception, yet the FIFA may have paid the highest price because of this. But it has to be noted that in politics, perception sometimes mimics reality. Mr. Chairman, as we know, in 1969, the Progress Party under Professor Kofi Abrefa Buzia won elections. Buzia's victory was somewhat clouded by the fact that Nkrumah's CPP had been banned from participating in the elections. The country had promulgated a constitution based on parliamentary democracy. And in a parliamentary democracy, every member of government had to be a member of parliament. The National Alliance of Liberals, under Mr. K.A. Bedema and Eve, an astute politician who, with Kojobo Tio, had masterminded Nkrumah's victory while he was in prison in 1951, won all the seats in the Volta region. Professor Buzia, a Bono from Wenchi, was legally barred from appointing anybody from the Volta region as a minister because the Progress Party had no MPs from the Volta region. It was, however, said then and subsequently that Buzia did not want anybody from the Volta region in his government. This, of course, was not true, but once perception took hold, it became reality. Mr. Chairman, Buzia's government was overthrown in a coup d'etat led by Colonel I.K. Achampon and Asante in January 1972. Ethnicity was certainly not an issue during the 7-year Achampon regime. It is to the credit of Achampon that he caused the removal of the requirement of stating one's tribe on public application forms. Achampong, however, wanted to keep the military's involvement in politics intact and proposed a new political arrangement called Union Government or Unigov. That is a government of the military and civilians. In a referendum, Achampong tried to massage the results. And Ghanaians were incensed. General Achampong was removed from office and placed under house arrest in a palace school led by General Akufu, his deputy. General F.W.K. Akufu was soon overthrown by junior officers and men in the June 4th uprising led by Major Boachijan, Ebuno, and J.J. Rawlings and Eve. I mentioned Major Boachijan because he was the leader at the time when J.J. Rawlings was in jail. But when Rawlings took over the mic, he energized the June 4th uprising. Generals Akufu, Achampong, and the FIFA were tied to the stake and executed along other senior officers. The first two executed, Generals Achampong and Utuka, were Generals Achampong and Utuka. Ladies and gentlemen, in any event, the AFRC lasted only 3 months, giving way to the government of President Dr. Hela Liman, a Sicily from Gwolu in the Upper West region. The 1979 Constitution, under which Dr. Liman operated, was based on a complete separation of powers, very much in the US mode. All ministers were appointed from outside Parliament. Some PNP MPs resented the fact that the real power was exercised by unelected personalities. The PNP was that weakened by internal strife and cabals, making it difficult for Dr. Liman to get a firm grip on the affairs of state. It was also perceived that in Liman's government, there was a disproportionate number of people from the three northern regions, and this was also resented by some in his party. And especially after the death of his mentor, Alhaji Imoro Igala, it was obvious that the center could not hold. It was therefore not surprising that Flight Lieutenant J.J. Rawlings, the chairman of the AFRC, who had handed over power peacefully to Dr. Liman, took back power by force of arms on 31st December 1981. Rawlings' tenure, first as a military dictator, ruling by decree, and then as leader of the National Democratic Congress with a huge parliamentary majority, was marked by the perception that there was a shadowy group of kinsmen, mainly members of the Ajovia clan of the Anlo state, which met regularly and took decisions which were favorable to their ethnic group. This, of course, may be entirely false, but in politics, perceptions may mimic reality. After Rawlings' 2 terms, J.A. Kufuor and Asante and his new patriotic party won elections in 2000. It was the first time that Ghana had witnessed a political turnover from one political party to another. There was the general perception at that time that Rawlings had given far greater opportunities to his own other tribe and the northern tribes to the partial exclusion of the Akans. Kufuor's win was therefore seen by some among the majority Akan group as taking power for them. During Kufuor's tenure, it was perceived that the ethnic complexion of his government was skewed in favor of the Akan tribes, especially his own Asante people. Kufuor was also attacked for not having at one time or the other any minister from the Upper West region, even though he could not claim, as Buzia did, that he was constitutionally barred. The difficulties which had encompassed the regimes of Buzia and Liman led Ghanaians to adopt what is essentially a hybrid of the parliamentary and presidential systems. From 1992, a president could appoint ministers from within or without parliament, with the constitutional limitation that the majority of the ministers had to be from parliament. In 2008, another political turnover occurred with the pendulum this time swinging in favor of the National Democratic Congress, led by President John Evans Atta Mills from the Central Region. Mills's government was not distinguished by any ethnic coloration. He unfortunately passed on during his first term, marking the only time a sitting head of state had died in office. His demise paves the way for the Vice President, Mr. John Mahama, a Gonja from Bole, to take up the position of President. He wisely brought in Mr. Misata, who, like Mills, was a Fanti, as his Vice President. After completing Mills's term, Mr. Mahama secured his own mandate to govern after winning the 2012 elections. And for the first time, we had a fully fledged election petition brought by Jacob Echebilamte, Nana Akufo-Addo, and Dr. Mahamadou Bawumia. And after a very lengthy court process, the Supreme Court ruled against the plaintiffs. The leader and candidate of the New Patriotic Party, Nana Akufo-Addo, decided not to seek a review of the decision and made a statesman-like statement accepting the decision of the court and thus the results of the election. During Mr. Mahama's term, the general perception, and it's not too long ago, the general perception was that he promoted the interest of his kith and kin to the detriment of other ethnic groups, especially in appointments, scholarships, business deals, and recruitment to the public services, especially the security agencies. This was the general perception. And again, as you all know, sometimes in politics, perceptions mimic reality. It has also been noted that President Mahama did not have any minister of cabinet rank from the Ashanti region, at least in his last year in office. Mr. Mahama became the first sitting president. You know, someone just said, Dr. Ajima Mensah, he was in the cabinet, but he was moved out to Western Housing, which was not a cabinet position. So there was no Ashanti there. Mr. Mahama became the first sitting president to lose an election and hence his job. Ghana has now established a political culture which says no politician has permanent tenure. We have ushered in the era of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. His accession to the presidency marks the third political turnover from a governing political party to an opposition party in the Fourth Republic. Even though it is too early to make a judgment on the ethnic complexion of his appointments, it is generally believed that it is dominated by Akans. Today in Ghana, we have two major political parties, the National Democratic Congress and the New Patriotic Party, which are the only parties represented in Parliament. It is a fact that the National Democratic Congress draws its support mainly from the Volta and the three northern regions. And the New Patriotic Party also draws its support largely from Ashanti and the eastern regions. In the 2016 elections, the NPP made substantial gains in the Upper West region. The swing regions of Greater Accra, Western and Central regions went with the NPP this time around. So can we then say that the NPP is an Ashanti party or that the NDC is an Ewe party? This is a matter I leave to you to think about and discuss. Mr. Chairman, I am of the opinion that 60 years on, many of us may still be in our tribal cocoons. Our perceptions are formed on the basis of our own worldview. Perhaps our experiences, often nowhere near reality. It may come as a severe shock, and I'm quoting from Robert White, who said it may come as a severe shock if you haven't given much thought to this subject before. But our precious cast in stone objective beliefs are often totally in contrast to any reality. Or more accurately, they are our perception of reality than the reality itself. 60 years on. Ghana, what do we do? First, we must accept that ethnicity is a fact. And there's nothing anybody can do about it. No one here asks to be born a Dagati, Fanti, or Krobo. And no one can decide to become an Asante, Kusasi, or Krobo if one is not born as such. So long as procreation continues, there will always be different ethnic groups in Ghana. Our problem is not because of our being Buno, Ekwiapem, or other. Our problem is ethnocentrism or tribalism, where people develop a fanatical attachment to their tribes that they think other ethnic groups are not quite like them, and therefore they should be looked down on. When you begin to think that it is only your ethnic group which has amassed all the good gifts which Providence has bestowed on us, and that another group, another ethnic group has monopolized all the negative traits in man. Then, my brothers and sisters, we get into the realm of stereotyping. If we stop to think about it, we will come to the realization that tribal stereotyping does not make sense. Respect for each other, irrespective of tribe, is the beginning of the acceptance of other ethnic groups. The collective ideas and energies of our people have to be harnessed for the development of our country. My brothers and sisters, there is wealth in our diversity. Indeed, our president, in his 60th anniversary address to the nation, acknowledged the importance of ethnic diversity when he asked Ghanaians to take pride in our diversity and rise above ethnic and sectional interests. Let me also remind you of the Achimota school crest, which adorns our admin block and which you will find also in our anniversary cloth. You will notice that the shield or crest represents the keys of a piano. Dr. Kwei Jiragri, who designed it, told us many years ago, you can play a tune on the black keys and play a tune on the white keys. But for harmony, you need to play both white and black keys. It is assumed that having experienced racial discrimination in America, Dr. Kwei Jiragri was thinking about the black and white races and what a harmonized world we could have. I, however, believe that Dr. Agri was thinking about the chiefs and people of the Gold Coast as well, a point which has been made by the chairman. Hence the motto of the school, Ut omnes unum sint, that all may be one. For harmony in our country, we need to work together as a people. That is the lesson of the Achimota school crest. Second, we need to build an opportunity society where government does not dictate, but empowers all citizens by creating an environment where each individual can attain his full potential. I will say to any head of state that within the limits of the law, select anybody who is qualified, even if you find such a person in your kitchen, but be prepared to face the consequences of your action. Mr. Chairman, I was born by an Ahanta woman from Disco, so I'm from Disco. My father was an Asante man from Sipetimpum in the Kumasi metropolis. I started school in Kumasi and continued at Achimota and Legon. I married an Achim woman from Kukrentumi. I live in Accra and work in Tema. I have business interests in Koforidua, Accra, Kumasi, and in the Yensuanu district. My closest friends include a Bono man from Drobo, an Ewe from Topalime, a Gan from Usu, and an Asante from Kwamai. Two of my sisters are married to Dagombes, one from Lamashegu and the other from Gushegu. Where I am today, I want to ask a question, whether it has anything to do with my being an Ahanta. So who am I? Ladies and gentlemen, dwell on that for a while. I thank you.